by Rosa Corey. You can get that on Amazon if you want to know the real threat that we are facing. Now, bear in mind, we are doing a completely new format to the show where we're going to be doing this not with my silly jokes and making fun of everything, all right? Look, this is my serious face. And here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guest joining me today is from the Morgan Report, the author of the Silver Manifesto itself, David Morgan from themorganreport.com. David, welcome to the program.
It's nice to be back with you. It's been a while. Thank you.
I get that a lot. Now, the thing that we would like to start off with today is our obligatory disclaimer that today is indeed a sponsored episode by the New Zealand Public Party. And by sponsored episode, I'm not saying that they're giving me any money or anything like that. I'm just saying that I am doing all of these shows for their benefit until they win the election. Now, just before the show here, David had a quick look at their website, and I'd like you to give your honest first impressions after just perusing it for a few minutes that we got time for.
Well, I'm quite impressed, and the first thing I really came to my mind is, how the United States was founded. It was basically natural law or God-given rights were constitutionally secured. So the only rights that we don't have naturally as human beings on the planet we gave some of those to a government formed of the people, by the people, and for the people, to an elected body that was there to secure those rights. So in other words, the only reason that government existed ideology-wise was to have a group that served the people to protect their God-given or their natural rights. That's why government exists. So looking at this format, and I didn't have a lot of time, but just rang that bell in my head about what the, let's say, best objectives for a limited government are, and how they're basically there to serve everybody. Let's face it, if we the people really have the power, and we do, but we don't understand it, then if we could start over, which it looks like this is basically a reset or restart, that's in my words, I didn't see them in what I read, this is a way to basically get the power elites out of the horrendous situation that New Zealand finds itself in, along with the rest of the world. I mean, just looking at some of the things that came to mind, like the 5G, fluoridation of the water, GMO foods, non-transparency of government, non-accountability of government, all these things to be rectified. I think it's extremely important that even if you don't agree with it, I agreed with everything that I was able to read, at least contemplate what kind of a world it would be where we had some truth back into the system and people were held accountable for their own actions. I mean, this is a concept that was begun in the United States and has failed miserably as time has marched on. It's failed, as it said in that website, that it was a conglomeration of a bunch of different constitutions here and there and kind of glommed together, and that New Zealand really doesn't have their own constitutionally based set of principles that they originated themselves. And it's time to, my word's not there, it's basically scrap the whole damn thing, get rid of as much of this trash as possible, start with a clean slate, and begin from the ground up. So I'm really impressed with this situation.
And from your experience, I mean, as we talked about on a previous show, the Silver Manifesto, manifesto itself can be interpreted, or at least one of the definitions, as a declaration of war. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure, there's several, and I explain my take on the word manifesto in the book. But basically, it's an all-encompassing, holistic look at the silver market from all aspects, monetary history, looking into the future. The last chapter I wrote was about the future of money, how important it is to have sovereignty in the monetary space where people can decide what money is and they transfer something of value for something of value rather than exchanging your labor, your hard work, your intellectual prowess for something that's made up by a group that's able to actually control everything you think, do, and say in this society at this present time. So it's all encompassing, and it's like not like silver is the only solution of the problem, but it actually is almost a metaphor and a tangible asset that leads one in that direction of thinking about what is real, tangible, and worthwhile that serves the people rather than extracts their labor for basically a promise to pay you nothing.
How do you feel about the current economic situation worldwide when it comes to government policy and regulation of the monetary system?
Well, it's absolutely a rigged game. It's run by a very select few that understand exactly what they're doing. It's basically gotten out of hand, and we're in a start of a currency crisis and a global reset. The last mortgage report I wrote for my premium members, in other words, our paid subscribers, is all about the WFE, or the WEF, World Economic Forum, and I went through and translated what it said on their website to what they want out of a reset. And they're published article that anyone could read off of their website. Basically, it's all spun, it's all spin meisters and propaganda, making it sound good and like it's really beneficial to the people. But if you digest it and spit it out in, let's say, translated form, I went through every one of them. It's all about control. It's all about making dictates in every aspect of your life, giving you very little choice, very little freedom, yet it reads sort of the opposite, like, oh, your lives will be enhanced, be better, there'll be less, problems and everything else. So what do I think? I think that they continue to put the screws to us. It's, as Alex Jones said, information wars. It's how they present the information and move the cognitive map, how you think, how you're programmed, how you're taught to believe. I'm going to digress a moment. I know I tell this story fairly often, but it probably bears repeating. Not a big Ralph Nader fan. I think he had a wonderful heart. I think he was a very gentle man, and I think he was a rather intelligent man, but he wasn't, in my view, very economically sound. But I was at a rally that he was the main speaker at, and there was a few sentences in there that really struck me, and they stick to me to this day. He said he had a very interesting childhood, that his family was very tight, and at the dinner table they always had these discussions, and they just didn't eat and look at each other. They got involved in talk. And he said one day he looked at his dad, looked at himself and his brother, and he said, "What did you learn in school today? Were you taught to think, or were you taught to believe?" And that always resonated with me, because we're taught to believe. We're not taught to think. And it demands critical thinking. Really, the basis of all knowledge is self-taught. I mean, basically, when you go to school, what you, in my very strong opinion, should be taught to critically think, which means question everything, even the teacher at the top of the, at the blackboard, and basically verify everything for yourself. Don't take your face value on anything. Always look at the other side's perspective. Always look at both points of view, and the third and the fourth. And form your own, sometimes opinions, or sometimes facts can't be argued with. But when the whole system is based on a slant one way, as you well know, Vinny, I know you've had your issues with the powers that be regarding our ability with YouTube channels and everything else else. I mean, I've gotten strikes. I've gotten things. I just never bother to monetize. I got, you use some music out of a song for 3 seconds. That's a violation of this or that. It's just nonsense.
If I may, that's a perfect segue to have a bit of a sub. So, ladies and gentlemen, both of my YouTube channels have been demonetized. So if you do want to support this channel in any way, shape or form, you have to actually go to the homepage of the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. Links are in the description if you want to make a donation through the KiwiBank, PayPal or Patreon. The PayPal email is guerrillamedia77@gmail.com to support this broadcast. It has been listener supported for a dozen years, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, David, continue.
No, that's very good. So I think, people like you, and there's several, are extremely important to get the word out. And I know that anytime I do an interview on a channel such as yours, that you're not necessarily going to agree with everything I say, but you let me say it. And that's what freedom of speech is all about. It's not about we already know in advance what the correct, situation is, and we're going to make sure that that's all that we hear. That's ridiculous. I mean, you talk about dumbing down society. Give them one point of view only. You really got a bunch of morons wrong.
That happened this morning, actually. Somebody made a comment about, now you're supporting this person or that person because of this person that did that thing. And I asked them, can you just go and do a search for guilt by association logical fallacies and get back to me?
Yeah, good for you, Vinny. Yeah, absolutely. It's no one's got a monopoly on the truth, and there are absolutes, there are black and whites, but most is gray. There's a lot of subtleties within subtleties as we seek what's really the ultimate truth. I guess I don't want to get too philosophical, but the truth about money is pretty obvious. It's been done over and over and over again, and when you have a system that's based on interest, it doesn't work. I mean, the example is if, God gave Jesus 1 penny at birth and compounded at about 2.5%, it'd be worth about 4 planet Earths right now, just that 1 penny of compound interest. So that shows you that when you buy a bond or a debenture or your interest rate on your savings book, that's fine for a generation or two, but ultimately it has to fail, and that's why these systems fail over and over again. Again, if it was a 2,000-year compounding of 1 penny, it'd be more than the planet Earth's value in dollar terms times 4. I mean, it's ridiculous. So.
That brings me to one of the questions that came up in the chat room was about cryptocurrencies, their viability in this current economic situation. What could you say about that?
Well, first of all, in the Morgan Report, I'm not trying to tout, buy the premium service, but we've been, I kind of threw in the towel and said, we better start covering this. This is obviously the way that the elite want to go. They want to basically have an all digitized system that there's no, the cashless system that's digitized, and I wrote about that in the report as well, but it's not just me reporting on it. So my take is that really we've kind of played into their hands in a way. A lot of the crypto advocates, and I certainly know something about it, it's not my purview to say I'm a crypto expert. I'm far from that, but I am certainly more than just acquainted with it. I've been to Anarchapulco several times, and I'd say 80% of the participants at that gathering are very pro-crypto and very knowledgeable about it. But basically, any unbacked, limitless crypto is now really different than a fiat monetary system. Now, if it's outside the purview of a government agency and people run it, philosophically it could be better, but the ultimate truth of it is if it's an unlimited, non-bound, and it would be transparent on the blockchain system, it could be diluted by making more and more crypto available. Whereas Bitcoin, of course, as almost anybody knows, has a fixed amount, which basically is the idea of having a more of a sound system where you know in advance that this has a value because it's a limited resource. So Bitcoin certainly has it right from at least that aspect. I think that there's probably too many out there. I think there'll be a great shaking out. I think the ones that are backed by physical precious metals will probably be more sought after, or any asset that's well recognized and needed. The DRC, the Congo has one for cobalt. I don't trust it. I don't trust the Congo situation with this, but I'm not anti-crypto. I'm pretty free market, as you know, Vinny. And, if you can discount anything I said, if you have a particular crypto or 2 or 10 that you love and you think they're going to the moon and all that, be my guest. I am affiliated with One Silver, Goldbacked cryptos, primarily silver-based. And we've just gotten in a family office, basically, that pumped in 10 million euros into this particular crypto. It's, again, silver-backed and gold-backed as well. And that's been a huge infusion that will basically take us, I think, to another level. And it's regulated. And, I am not really that big on being regulated, but it is. Which means that there's a lot of transparency to it by the authorities, which also means that it's able to issue a debit card against it. That hasn't happened yet, but that should be coming forthwith within the next couple of months or so. So it's one of those that will be exchangeable for other cryptos using the Syscoin system. It'll be peer-to-peer, which I already sold a Silver Manifesto book that you displayed at the beginning of the interview for a gentleman in the UK, which saved a bunch of time and effort and currency exchange rates and all that nonsense. He paid me in AGX, and I accepted an AGX, and it was just I had to laugh when because it was my first transaction on that platform, and I was like, please, it just was so easy and so it's just kind of fun, at least for me it was. So that's it. I don't have a big, we do cover it. We do think it's the way we're going, and we think there's really two sides to crypto story. This is probably important to say. I think there's going to be the official Fed coin from the U.S. or something, I don't know if that's the right name, where the banks finally decide that's the way to go. You've got to sign up. And then there's probably going to be the alternative cryptos that are spearheaded by free market thinkers like ourselves that will be an alternative. My problem with it is that the official Fed coin, as an example, won't accept Bitcoin for mortgage payments or stock purchases or loans to businesses or whatever, and they only accept their digital currency. So I'm afraid, and this comes from experience and monetary history, where once these official digital cryptocurrencies come to effect, run by the elite that's already there, they are not going to ban or disrupt. They're going to disrupt the existing ones, where some just will not have the vitality that they have at this point in time. What do you think about that? I mean, you've probably looked at the cryptos harder than I have and probably more involved than I am. Do you think that they don't want to give up the money power? It's power, so are they going to kind of put some of these cryptos in a situation where it's more difficult to use them in official means like home purchases or auto purchases or that type of thing, or am I way off base?
I think you're way off base. But the thing is here, I've got virtually no knowledge of cryptos and all of that kind of stuff. But however, what's interesting is that people confuse the words blockchain and cryptocurrency quite significantly, as this is what James Corbett pointed out on a significant episode that he did a number of years ago. And the blockchain capacity for multiple computers, so that there isn't actually a centralized banking system to produce these currencies, I think that is the dynamism that we should be looking at more closely in terms of the regulation of any kind of national currency. Therefore, you don't have overly government regulation, and everybody actually participates, and that way there's no head of the snake to cut off. There's no central currency to control, theoretically. However, you can see that now that many larger players within the field, particularly the massive corporate banks, banks, JP Morgan and Bear Stearns and all of those corrupt bastards, they are very, very interested in cryptocurrencies because, like you say, these are digital currencies that will lead to more control over individuals. So it's a complex issue as far as I'm concerned. And I recall one time a band member came to me and spoke about this new cryptocurrency, Ethereum, or this other one, or whatever it was. Really excited, but doesn't actually know anything about it, and before promoting it, and that I think is dangerous because I think we're getting into some kind of a pop cult. To a large degree, would you say that that's a fair assessment, that there's sort of a pop cult out there in terms of all these new emerging cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, I think it's going to consolidate like the internet bubble. It's going to get down to a lot less than exist right now, and some will just go by the wayside, and there'll be some that, like through the internet boom, Amazon, Yahoo, some of these large ones that we take for granted now, they still exist, but there are a lot of them that don't. So I think it'll be similar in the crypto space. It's very typical of any new invention or idea. You go back to the automobile industry, and Ford Motor Company came through, but there were all kinds of startups in the automobile industry when it just initiated that never made it very far. So it's typical, and it'll be the same in the crypto space, I'm sure.
Now, in terms of the New Zealand economy, or any economy for that matter, would you actually recommend going back to a silver or gold standard, and if so, why?
No, I think it's best to go back to well, first of all, a paper money system in theory works. It never has, but if you were able to put out a receipt for every hour of labor or every good or service out there, and there was no watering the milk, in other words, there wasn't somebody in the back room able to counterfeit and produce more than the actual existence of the productive capacity of the society, in theory it would work. It never has. I want to emphasize that. But what you need is honesty and transparency in the marketplace, and that's something that we haven't had for a very, very long time. The beauty about the precious metals is that they, by their very nature, inhibit the ability of government to create more than exists. But you do usually get an increase in productivity because people take the iPhone, 1, and it's the 2, it's the 4, it's the 5, it's the 12. So it gets better and usually cheaper over time. So iPhone 10 is far superior to an iPhone 4, for an example. And because of that productive capacity and ingenuity of the human species, you actually get more value as time goes on because things get better and better over time, usually, not always. So an expanse of the money supply in the natural order of things, if you had a gold-only standard, the gold supply increases at about 1.5% a year. So you could put an interest rate of 1.5% a year on a pure gold standard because you're increasing the money supply out of the ground at that rate on aggregate, on the average every year. So as long as it was commensurate with the natural order of things or natural law, then you could have basically that example I gave about God and Jesus Christ and the interest rate. But it'd be a very low interest rate. Because of the expanse of the gold supply would be at that rate. Silver, I think, is very important. A gold-only standard moves into a fiat-only standard. So you can only measure gold in terms of a piece of paper. You really have no standard. But when you have to measure gold in the terms of the amount of silver that's available, now you have a standard. You have a bimetallic standard. You have a check and balance that's built in inherently into the nature of both the metals. And we were on a bimetallic standard for a great deal of time in the world for a while, and also in the United States for a while. And once it was morphed to a gold-only standard by the crime of 1873, where the bankers knew exactly what they were doing, the metaphor of that is the Wizard of Oz, where Follow the Yellow Brick Road was where Dorothy clicked her silver slippers. They were ruby in the movie for intent, I think, just because it could show red. And I also think there was more thinking behind it. They didn't want silver mentioned in the movie, but it was silver slippers. And it was all about the people's money being, the farmers, the miners, the, laborers, those people, construction workers, they all were on the silver standard out in the West, and the banks had all the gold, and they really didn't control the silver market, and they wanted absolute control. So it was a lot easier to go a monometallic standard. When you do that, you basically take the power. So the power is the old adage, he who owns the gold makes the rules. But the truth of the matter, he who owns the silver could make the rules, because the people, the banks really have no silver. So for all practical purposes, very, very little. But the people, for the most part, have it. And if they continue to own it, then we would actually have more power. And silver is far superior to gold if you look at it as a metaphor of what would be someone that you would hire for as a personal assistant. Let's use that example. So, Vinny, if I gave you two choices and there was a personal assistant was extremely attractive, male or female, take your pick, I don't care, and they were versed in word processing, answering the phone, and getting coffee, and that person was a factor of, let's say, 90 times or 80 times more expensive than this other one that was maybe more average looking, but not only did word processing, get coffee, and answered the phone, but they knew 4 languages. They could translate, any language. They could not only make coffee, but any cappuccino or any exotic drink you wanted. They had the ability to do research for you. They had the ability to connect you with anybody you wanted within the world within 4 days or less. They could get you into meetings that you never were able to get into before. They had assets and abilities that were so far above and beyond this other person. You would say, well, value to me, first of all, they're 80 times less cost, and they probably have 10 times the value of this other person. And that's a metaphor for the gold and silver markets, because silver is absolutely essential, critical, indispensable, and required for modern day society. You could run the world without gold, but you couldn't have this conversation we're having over the internet without silver.
Well, that's another part of the chapters in your book as well, is that silver has so many technological applications that are having patents filed and things of that nature. Would you be able to explain that a little bit?
Sure. There's the more important an asset is, the more capability it has to produce wealth for the population at large. So the most important one that we all take, well, many of us take for granted, is oil. Oil not only was the most important asset to humanity. Without oil, we wouldn't have a population of 7.5 billion, because without oil, you couldn't grow enough food to feed that many people, or harvest it, or transport it. You couldn't grow it. Petrochemicals are used in the growing process. So oil, by far, far more than the metals, is the absolute pinnacle of commodities. But the next one down is silver. Now, oil has, plastics and everything I outlined, and there's just subset after subset of the products that oil produces, tires and asphalt and on and on. But silver, like oil, has the ability to conduct electricity better than any metal. It reflects light better than any metal. It's got unique acoustic properties. And it's essential for anything electrical or electronic, which is basically the digital world that we exist in right now. And as it becomes more and more digitized, you'll see silver used in more and more applications. And of course, nano silver is something that's come to the fore and will continue to be utilized in more and more applications. So it's essential. It can't be substituted. I mean, most of the substitutes for silver that are even viable do not replace it as efficiently. In other words, if you used palladium or platinum, you wouldn't get the quality that you get out of silver, which is far cheaper than either of those two metals. But they could substitute it, but again, not as effectively. It would be, let's say, silver is the 100% efficient in a cell phone. but you had to use palladium for whatever reason, it would be like, and I'm just making up the number, I want to give you the correct idea. I don't know what the efficiency would be other than it would be lower, so it might be 90%, but that's the idea. So there's really no substitute for silver in many, many arenas, and when it is substituted, you get an inferior product. So it is the technological metal. It's also the green metal. It's used in water purification. It's used in plastics for food preservation. So when you get your wrapped meat or whatever, even though they don't talk about it, it's not in every case. I don't want to make this like it's global and everyone does it, but in some instances it's used to preserve because it's an anti-biocide. It's used in a lot of the bottled water because of the shelf life, but they don't have to list it because the regulations are such that as long as it's in a parts per billion or parts per million, it's not needed to be put on the label. But, you know, if everyone picked up their bottled water and saw that there was some nano silver in there to make it last, you know, months and months on the shelf, they might say, what is about this silver? They might get curious about it. I'm not making that up. I'm actually being somewhat serious, but trying to be a bit humorous at the same time. But silver does enter our lives in so many ways that most people don't really even factor in or think about. They think about what they've been programmed to think is that, you know, the gold standard is the only way to go. Really not, at least a fiat currency and a financial disruption that we're now facing. Silver is actually the policeman on gold. I had a lecture series I did about 4 times, Vinny, and you might have seen it, maybe not. It was called What If Silver Was Treated Like Gold? And I went through the monetary aspects of the silver market and said, what if silver was treated like gold? Here's how much gold the central banks hold. What if they had to hold the equivalent in silver to match their gold so that it was like a ratio of half silver, half gold? Well, if that were true, they'd have to multiply the price of silver by 1,000. And of course, that's not going to happen. I didn't even suggest that silver is going to go up 1,000-fold. What I was suggesting is by taking it out of the monetary system and castigating it to a industrial commodity only and getting away from them from, as I said, the days of the Wizard of Oz, that metaphor for the banking elite, that they were able to demonetize it effectively and brainwash everybody into thinking it's really not that valuable, when if they counted it as money, it'd probably be more valuable than gold because there's less of it available as a monetary asset, because 60% of it is used in our cell phones and our laptops and our flat screen TVs and our membrane switches on our microwave ovens and our washing machines and our refrigerators and our automobiles, and on it goes.
And the health aspects, we've got some talk of nano silver and what was the other one? Colloidal silver as well. You didn't know anything about those?
Oh, I do. I mean, for those that are so involved, because I don't like to do it in the public, I'll do it for you, Vinny, in a general way, because I'm not making any medical claims. But if you go to themorganreport.com/silver water, all one word, SALVERWATER, you can have a look at one that I use personally. But it's well established by the Silver Institute, so I'll quote them, that silver has substantial biocidal properties. It does kill bacteria. I won't say anything about the virus situation. But it is used in a lot of health aspects. Nano silver is actually superior, and that's what some of the colloidal silver products have. Some of the colloidal silver is somewhat dangerous, and the reason I say that, and I didn't know this for a long time, silver's inert. Silver cannot hurt you. Silver, 9999 fine silver, cannot hurt you. It's inert. The problem is a lot of these colloidal silver situations are people using a 9-volt battery and a almost pure silver rod in water that is impure. And so you get some products that are not healthy for you in the mix, and they make it too strong. There's no real, let's say, quality assurance of what your silver water really has as far as purity and as far as strength is concerned. And those are actually fairly important. They're very important, actually. So when you hear about or see some of these situations where, you know, someone's turned blue, in all cases that I'm aware of, they're based on the fact that it wasn't really, there's something connected to the molecular structure that wasn't silver alone. But silver alone cannot hurt you. And you'll read that in the literature. I mean, that's backed up in the, you know, you don't know. It's backed up in, you know, like a top-end medical journal or research where you can prove that it is inert. But again, if it's not, if it's mixed with some other element or elements out of the water, for an example, which is quite common for these people that make their own colloidal silver, you've got to be a little bit careful. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that makes their own colloidal silver is in grave danger. You're not. It takes an awful lot of, let's say, modified impure silver, a lot, to do anything negative to the body. But there are people that go to extremes. You know, the old American adage, if a little's good, a lot more is better for you, and it's just not true. Nature preaches balance. Sometimes a very small amount is all that's required, and that's what you want. You know, you don't want to overeat, you don't want to oversleep, you want to have balance. So same thing with the use of silver as a biocide. I think you have to use it and use it effectively. So end of pitch.
So let's think about the currency situation, because somebody's put in the chat room here, and I think that that's a very good point to make, because this is the discussion in this century, in my opinion. What kind of currency situation could we be adopting if we wish to escape the New World Order's grip?
Well, this is sounding self-promotional, but I truly believe it, and he asked, so I'll answer it. I think this LOAD project that I'm involved in is probably one of the better ones. There are other backed currencies that are gold or silver-based. I think that's one way to escape. There's one, I want to give credit. I'll give credit to the website. It's Silver Report Uncut is the YouTube channel. And he did a great job. It brought it to my attention. There is an actual physical note, I think it's from Utah, and it's a very small amount of gold, but it's actually in the paper. So you're actually handling gold in a note. So it's physically there, but it's a very small amount of grams. And so it's so many grams of gold, which you can easily figure out with your phone. And you can actually pass gold between people quite easily, because one of the drawbacks of gold is that if you're looking, you know, at one of these, you're looking at, you know, roughly $2,000 US. So how do you break that up? And they've broken it up for you and put it in these in this currency. So I think that's the best way. I mean, if you just go to pure silver, you know, silver coins or silver bars or whatever, you know, they'll work in a grid down situation.
Well, that's extraordinary, because that's the combination of the best best of both worlds. We're talking about putting actual gold and silver shards to a large degree within a paper currency format, so that way the currency itself does have its own intrinsic value, and that way you can't just create money out of thin air via fractional reserve banking. Is that the idea? Absolutely.
I mean, it's so obvious. And there have been others. There was one I've got on my desk. I can't show it to you. It's buried in my stuff. But it was a similar idea, and it didn't really seem to catch fire. This one that I just described may or may not. I hope it does. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than having that kind of a system. You know, I think that's one of the best systems, especially to escape. There's a book called Highland, and I can't even spell it. I think it's HEILAND, written by my friend Franklin Sanders. It goes into a fictional projection of basically where we are, and you've got to make a choice. Are you going to be in a beast type of system, or are you going to be a free man? And if you're a free man on the land, then you're going to have to barter, and the choice in that fictional book is silver. So you're in a non-digital world because you chose to escape the luxuries that were available if you were able to connect with the digital. But if you exempted yourself you had a harder life as far as, growing your own food and getting your own shelter with your community. And to preserve labor and account for it, they use silver coins. So, again, I'm not saying that's the way we're going to go, but we are going in some very uncharted waters, as I think anyone that listens to the Vinny Eastwood Show is well aware. And a lot of us are in somewhat of a fear mode, even myself, and I've been looking at this for 4 decades, are, I wouldn't say fearful, but agitated, at least, without some trepidation, which is a big word for somewhat fearful about the future, where it's going to go, and what can I do not only to help myself, but help others, and what choices will I have to make for myself and my family in the future. I mean, it's easy to talk freedom, liberty, justice for all until the SWAT team shows up to you, like I think you've experienced. I've had my own, but nothing as dramatic as you have, Vinny. But I've had my own run-ins, and it gets your your nervous system perked up, to put it in polite terms. And I've already, in the last show we did, I talked about how I lost my job, and that was one of those turning points in my life where I had to decide to be true to myself or true to the corporation. And I chose myself, and thank God I did, but it wasn't an easy choice, and I only had really a few seconds to make that decision, but I digress. I'll throw it back to you, Vinny.
If we've got shards within cash currencies, I mean, at the moment, I love digital currency because of the amount of purchases we can make online. The need for storefronts and things of that nature is largely going down, and I don't think that's necessarily a negative progression. I think that the ease and the liquidity that's available with digital currency provides significant advantages in the modern market, but the problem is that it's completely under the control of ruthless criminal sociopathic scumbaggery. So what's the midway here? Is it possible to let me say I buy a Blu-ray off of trademe.co.nz and it's $15 and I pay for that with my credit card? Is there somebody in the background on the other end that would, say, for example, take $15 worth of silver and or gold-laced notes that would physically move that from one account to the other, but all I have to do is take a digital transaction? I'm not sure how it would work in the modern sense.
Yeah, there are, and it's extremely rare, but I'm glad you brought it up. So here where I live in the great Northwest, there's a friend of mine that listened to me lecture about Utah reenacting their governor and outlaw the ability for anyone in the state, as long as both parties agreed, to use gold or silver in any transaction whatsoever. Now, that's a little hard to do at a corporate store like what we have here, Walmart's and grocery stores, whatever. So my friend, came up to me after the lecture and said, "That's my dream, my dream, my dream." I was so excited. So he's basically implemented this. So it works like this. You deposit silver or gold or cash, or all combination thereof, and you can also do it with any crypto now. I think I won't say any crypto, a majority of the cryptos, like the best known, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. I don't know them all. You probably know more names than I do. So any of that assets you deposit, and then you're issued a debit card against that. And when you spend your money for that, what is it, Bluetooth, you tell the merchant's transparent. All he sees is a debit card with numbers on it and it goes through. But on the back end, when you are paying for it out of your account, you choose, do I pay it from my cash account, my silver account, my gold account, or a crypto account? So this is a big step forward. And they've been working on the software for this system for a long time, and it's now ready to scale up. Right now, there's probably just several hundred that are doing it. I've done it for years, and I deposited my silver, and of course, I do what I teach. I started small, I went to the gas station and threw this debit card in there and, made sure that everything worked. But I really didn't want to spend, $25 silver. I mean, that's it. It looks like any card anywhere. And right now, so I cashed it up, And I didn't want to, spend $20 silver when silver is at, 15 or 16 or 17. So I debited off, like any debit card, off my cash side. But then when silver got down to the $12 level, the day before, I think it was at 14, I made a large purchase through this dealer. And I averaged my price down substantially from the 20-something level down. Probably my average price now is, let's say, 16, probably more like 17. Silver's at 23. So next month, when I buy my gas, my food, my restaurants, my entertainment, the stuff I do on that debit card every month, guess what? I'm going to debit some silver out of there. So I'm actually spending my silver in the marketplace doing whatever I want, and it's transparent to the merchant. They have no idea that I'm paying in silver. All they know is that they got their fiat, that I got to spend my choice, either fiat, silver, or crypto.
So you've essentially converted solid, real, tangible assets into a digital transaction format.
Absolutely.
That's a game changer.
It is a game changer. It's a huge game changer. I mean, Vinny, you and I know each other fairly well, and when they get this software where they can take a lot of people, I will definitely private message you or put it to you and let you have a look. I'll have to verify they can do it for New Zealand, but I think they can do it anywhere. I'm pretty certain they can, and we'll get it to you. So anyone interested, that's your audience, I know your audience is vast compared to mine, they'll have the ability to do that. And the best way really is to buy through him. I know that a lot of people want to ship, and they can, but if you ship your silver, it's rather cumbersome to do it, especially if you're from New Zealand going to the U.S. But and as this thing develops, it'll be more robust, less anti-fragile, the new buzzword, because if it really gets going, then you would have depositories, probably in Australia and New Zealand and Europe and the U.S. But right now, where it is, it's basically a startup. You might think of it in those terms, but it's been working for years. There's just a very small group that knows about it. But there are, there's an asset protection group. Perpetual Assets is their name, and they're well familiar with it, and they've gotten several of their clients involved with this debit card because it just makes sense. People, if silver's going to go where I think it's going to go, from 23 to double and double again, and maybe redouble from there, then if you have silver on deposit, and one of the questions I get, especially from people with gray hair like me, is, well, how do I spend it? How do I sell it? Well, spend it. I mean, if you bought silver at 23 and can spend it at 223, why not enjoy a little of it? Pay off that mortgage, pay off the car, pay off that school loan, buy that business you always wanted, take the wife on their first vacation in 20 years, whatever, But no, so it's there. I mean, I maybe talked a little too long about it, but it's very exciting. I mean, when Dale came up to me and said, that's my dream, I want to do it, I'll finish the story but digress a bit. I said, sort of good luck. I've been working in Scotiabank. I'm not a big favor of banks, as you well know, Vinny, but Scotia said, okay, we'll do it, David, if and only if you guarantee us 1,000 Visa cardholders right off the bat. I said, I can't do that. Silver bugs are way too conservative, and they're way too skittish. They want to test the waters, and once 10 people do it, then you'll get 12 and 20. I can't give you 1,000. So I had been trying for about 2 years to get a bank to accept that idea of depositing real money and issuing make-believe money against it. What a concept. And yet I really failed. And so Dale had a different approach, which was very, I wouldn't say ingenious, but a good solid one. Got the right lawyers involved, started it off, and away we go. And I was one of the first, probably with the first 20, to go down there and start an account with him.
Now, there have been some questions in the chat room about just some practical things for the listeners to take on board. Is, for example, eBay an all right place to go buy your gold and silver? Where can people practically put their investments? Are there trusted institutions, things of that nature?
Yeah. eBay is not the best. I mean, if you know what you're doing, you might do okay on eBay. You're better off with an online dealer that's been around for a while. 5, 10, 15, 20 years is even better. And then, of course, any local dealer that doesn't mark it up too high. The problem, especially with silver, is the markups are very high outside of North America. If you buy silver in Europe, you're paying like a 10 to 17% value-added tax. I've tried buying in Australia, New Zealand. I haven't been to, but I know from my trips to Indonesia, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, that there's just a huge markups in the silver market for local dealers. And so I think one of the best ones is to get this one that I keep, and it doesn't have to be the one I'm associated with, okay? I'm just trying to give you the right idea. I think where it's really going to go, Vinny, is the crypto or the blockchain market, where you can buy it at what I'll call the world price, which is an average of all these markups that these different nation states have on silver. So the honest to God price of silver, instead of being 23 on the spot market, is truly 27 if you want physical sitting in your hand. It's the real thing. And everyone accepts that. If I want real silver, I pay the real price, and that's what it is. And then they have it on their phone, and now they have two options. They can spend it or they can send it. They can take it and spend it in the marketplace, or they can send it to their location and have it delivered to them. So I think that's probably the way we're going to go. Most people in your age group or younger are very familiar with all these apps. Once they install this AGX app on their phone, they're able to transact. And if they don't want to spend their silver in silver, that's fine. You can use the Syscoin system and use it for, I think, any other digital currency or whatever you want. So it's a very robust system. It basically, I often use the idea that one size doesn't fit all. It's impossible to make the perfect portfolio for everybody. People are different ages, different risk tolerances, different anticipations of their future, and all that. But in this case, this system is pretty robust as far as accepting gold, silver, crypto, whatever, and you can utilize it in numerous ways. You can have it in your hand, or you can send it physical somewhere, or you can just spend it. So I really think this is the future, especially the convenience of it. And of course, there's always that hesitation. Well, David, how do I trust these people? And the answer is you don't. What you do is you trust them enough to use a portion of your silver or gold. I would never, in my case that I told you, where I just averaged down my silver price on the debit card, was that my entire silver holdings? Hell no. No. But it's enough probably to keep me going at my expense level, Vinny, for probably a year and a half. So I don't have to bother worrying about my basics, which is my gasoline, my diesel, my food, and my occasional restaurant these days, and maybe a movie rental or two, right? That silver is going to cover that for a long time. And if silver goes from 23 to 43, it's probably going to extend that deposit for 3 or 4 years. I'll probably be gaining value as I spend my silver, which is a nice feeling, Vinny. Everyone wants an account like that.
Now, what about global resets? What happens if Trump decides to take US currency into cryptocurrency, or decides to back the gold standard, or something of that nature? Or what would the silver or gold price be if Trump revalues the US currency with gold and silver backing it?
Yeah, well, Judy Sheldon has been I guess nominated is the right word, for being a member of on the board of the Fed, and she's well known to be pro-gold, and there is a possibility that we might go to some type of gold-backed currency. I doubt they would do it with silver, although I wouldn't rule it out entirely. Silver market is so small that there's probably, it'd be difficult, but it could happen. But what would happen is they'd have to value it at the correct price, which is rather difficult to do. But like in the 30s, when they revalued gold from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce, that really wasn't sufficient of a markup to really get the market going. It was really still undervalued, even though it was a 70% increase. So in this case, if you look at the M1 money supply and you had a fully backed gold coin standard where everyone could have those gold pieces of paper in their wallets, and that was all the gold available, and the people and the banks, of course, would have some, obviously, but that would be it. You could do it with like $14,000 an ounce gold. But if you did, as Jim Rickards has stated many times, a 40% backing, then you could go with a lower number, $10,000 gold, $5,000 gold. So what do I think? I don't know. I want to state that again. I don't know. But I would say as a minimum, Vinny, in today's fiat frenzy of financial scumbaggery, as you say, with the psychopathic structure spouting out fiat, so much funny money that there aren't enough trees on the planet to print that much money. That, I'd say, at least $5,000 an ounce U.S. equivalent to other currencies in the world minimum, and that might not be high enough to get us reinflated to actually get the system going again. So I'd say that's as a minimum, and that'd be gold only. If they brought silver into the mix, what would the ratio be? The ratio would be correctly whatever the market determined. If the market determined that 51 ratio is correct, then so be it. But it should be able to float. As silver became more valuable relative to gold, the gold-silver ratio could drop to 40, 30, 15, or go the other way, depending on what the market determined the relative values between the two metals are. But I don't think they'd bring silver into the monetary system. I just don't see it happening. They're so adept at brainwashing everybody that a gold standard is the only way to go. And as I said many times, and I'll repeat, a gold-only standard is one step away from a fiat system, and that's one step away from a financial collapse. So you really do want a bimetallic standard, and actually the best is a trimetallic standard. If you go back into Sweden, I had the privilege of going through the Monetary Museum a couple times on my trips to Stockholm. They traded in copper, and they got these big pieces of copper, but they knew they had intrinsic value. And of course, they weren't on that system for a long time. Well, they were on it for quite a few number of years, but it didn't last till now, obviously. But the idea was that something of value for something of value. And that's, of course, the whole idea between exchanging your labor or your intellectual property or your invention or your crop or whatever for something of value. You don't want to give it away to somebody that's in the back room printing up an IOU that's really in intrinsic value worth nothing.
Indeed. Now, speaking of things that are worth nothing, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to this show for free. You get charged nothing, and that is the way it's been for about 12 years. Now, over here, we have the reason why I'm asking for donations and things like that. It's my little baby, so I'm just going to show you this little 10-second clip, David, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all.
Daddy loves you so much because you're just so cute.
Oh.
All right, that's enough. That's enough.
This is my baby. It's so cute, so sweet. Oh, my bubba. I think that to a large degree we forget that we're here for a very short period of time, historically speaking, and that passing off to the next generation is essentially your job. As the Greeks say, your job in life is to plant a tree whose shade you shall never get to sit beneath. So hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you do value this show, you value the information that it is putting out there. This is simulcasting to the Vinny Eastwood Show YouTube channel, and it also to the NZPP YouTube channel. I'm not American, but I just think NZPP sounds better than NZPP. It's just, and there are some people who are trying to poo-poo the PP, which is exactly as mature as it sounds. Now, I do want to thank you very much, David, for your time, for your expertise, and for your 40-year commitment to honesty, essentially.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and love your sense of humor. Keep doing what you're doing. You are making a big difference, Vinny, and I know you've faced some very big trials and tribulations on this path that you're blazing, and I commend you for that publicly. So hang in there, my friend. Hang in there, my brother, and kudos to your beautiful baby. I wish the best for everyone out there, and especially the young people.
And could we please allow you a moment for some shameless self-promotion while we're down here in the last minute or so of the broadcast?
Sure. If you go to the main landing page, themorganreport.com, the best thing to do on a maybe twice a week basis is go to the blog pull-down menu. Every video that I do that's public, I put on our blog so you can find it easily. There's a couple of ads over there on the right side, which you can look at or not. I really don't care. There's a savings plan in silver and gold that's awesome, but unfortunately, it's only available for Canadians and Americans. It's not available to anyone else right now. Anyway, if you go to the blog, in the top header of the blog, very small icons. There's our Twitter feed, the Twitter emblem, which is our Twitter feed. There's a YouTube emblem or icon, which is our YouTube channel. There's a LinkedIn icon, which is our LinkedIn. So if you're interested in Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, any of that stuff, if you go to the blog page and look at the top margin, you'll see the icons are kind of small. I wish my webmaster would make them about twice as big, but regardless, they work. So it's easy. I do a lot on Twitter. Almost everything you see on Twitter is from yours truly. There's only 2 people that have access to my account besides myself that have worked with me for years, that I trust them to post whatever they want on Twitter as a benefit to the people that want to follow not only the metals closely, but what's going on in the degradation by these psychopathic blood-sucking elitists that want to control everything that we think, do, and say. I'm totally for free speech. There's many people that say stuff I don't agree with whatsoever at all, and it doesn't matter because they have the right to say it. And I think that's an attitude that we all should have. Again, unfortunately, as you and I, Vinny, have experienced, the elitists, the YouTubers, the Facebookers, and the other prostitutes, as Gerald Celente calls them, have other ideas.
They do. And ladies and gentlemen, once they get rid of free speech, free thinking will be next. And once you can't say what you think, eventually you'll stop thinking at all. David, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
David Morgan at themorganreport.com. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again sometime, brother.
Very good.
That's David Morgan from the Morgan Report, ladies and gentlemen. Very appreciative for his time and expertise on the show today. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping before we end the live cast today. For those of you who are watching right now, could you please give this channel a little bit of a subscription, give this video a little bit of a like, and if you really enjoyed this foray into it all, ladies and gentlemen, please think about starting up a long-term automatic payment into the Vinny Eastwood Show. You can do that via patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood. You can do that through KiwiBank or PayPal. On the homepage of the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, there are PayPal buttons there that have little drop-down menus, so if you want to give $1 a month, $10 a month, or $5 a week, anything like that, you can do so. I also want to remind people that I'm incredibly ungrateful, and I'm very sorry about that. I don't thank you guys enough for the huge showing of support that has been coming into the show in the recent weeks since we've started helping out the New Zealand Public Party, and I do want to thank each and every one of you for your contributions to the show. It's been taking care of my wife and my daughter so much easier and a lot less stressful, knowing that we do have so much support out there. With that being said, thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes.